Temple alum Shea Petty makes the biggest shot in the WNBA playoffs, and she tells us all about it.
We cover that, and the QB job might belong to Anthony Russo, but he doesn't own it quite yet. OwlSports Update starts right now.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of OwlSports Update alongside Jackson Neal. I am Brooklyn Vaughn. Today we have coverage from all across Temple athletics, from men's basketball to field hockey and even some gymnastics.
And beyond Broad Street, we caught up with one former Owl making her mark in the WNBA playoffs. But first, let's talk football. The team has its first game in just about 1 week.
With the anticipation of the Navy matchup on October 10th building, the conversations about Temple's quarterback room get all the more interesting. There's more talent as Trad Beatty continues to develop, and in comes Raelle Mitchell, the redshirt sophomore transfer from Iowa State. But there's also last year's starter, Anthony Russo. And one thing we've learned these past few weeks listening to Rod Carey is that it's Russo's job, but job security isn't something he should be counting on.
Our quarterback room is way better than it was last year. And that's no slight to the guys who were there last year, but Trad's improvement and then Raelle and what he brings has pushed Russo. And that is a true, like, hey, you better button up and play every drill and every rep. Because if you don't, this guy's nipping at this guy's heel, and then that switches who's nipping at whose heel. And it's pushed the whole room through the competition.
And the key word there from Carey is competition. While Russo is the returning starter and still holds that distinction, his role is not guaranteed. Carey sees the potential for either Beatty or Mitchell to earn a role in this offense.
As far as Raelle having a role, absolutely. Trad could have a role. Russo obviously could have a role. I would like not to have to play two quarterbacks. I would like to play one. So they're all vying for that spot, but their role all would be a little different on that. And right now, Russo, like I've said, is still our starter, but that competition in that room is real.
All right, and we now bring in Inside the Nest anchor Ray Dunn to talk a little bit more about this elevated quarterback room. Hey, Ray.
Hey, Brooklyn. Hey, Jackson. How are you guys?
We're doing good. All right, let's get right into it, Ray. First question. What do you think would have to happen for us to see a change in the quarterback position?
It's going to have to be a slow start. I think we saw last year with the way they went with the two-quarterback system, you need the team itself to go through a slow start. Russo didn't exactly prove himself through the first month of last football season, but the team was playing well enough to keep him in his job. If you see them struggle as a team, then I think the questions will really start to rise as to whether or not Russo will continue as the starter.
Now, Ray, behind Russo, there's Beatty and Mitchell. What can you tell us about those quarterbacks?
Raelle Mitchell is, I don't know, I think both of you went to elementary school. I don't know if you ever heard the actions speak louder than words type of philosophy, but Mitchell is that for this program. As soon as he was ready to transfer, they were the first to talk to him, and they were really, really keen on bringing him in. This is a guy who had a lot of schools after him, Cal, Michigan State, and he chose Temple. Why? I wonder. I think the playing time is something that must have come up, and it's definitely a position in which he believes he can win. I think Mitchell, when you look at who he is, he's a dual-threat quarterback. He can run, he can throw. That's what Rod Carey wants in a quarterback. It's very much evident in the way they ran their offense at NIU that that's the way they want to go. So I think Mitchell fits that build. He's got a hell of an arm, and he can also really run it. In terms of Trad Beatty, you look at another big-armed guy. He's just a big guy. He's a big specimen. He's that prototypical size for a quarterback, and I think he fits more into the pocket passer-esque. He can move a little bit, but he fits more into the pocket passer type of quarterback that you would have looked for from previous coaching regimes. So it's interesting. They bring different skill sets. I think they can complement one another well.
Yeah, Ray, and it is interesting because then you look at those two different skill sets, and I want to ask you now, who do you think would get the call up first?
Oh, it's going to be Mitchell. If there's going to be one that gets called up first, it's going to be Mitchell. And it goes back to what they've shown us. I mean, as the pressers have gone on with Carey, he continues to mention the competition there. He starts off with Real Mitchell. They brought in Real Mitchell. This is not this is good for quarterback depth. This is a past high recruit who wants a new home to get some playing time. Real Mitchell is not coming to Temple to sit here and keep Anthony Russo's towel warm. He's coming here because he wants to play. And I think that's evident in who's going to get that first call up.
Well, thank you so much, Ray. To catch more of Ray Dunn, check out Inside the Nest every single Thursday covering the Temple football team. Thank you. Thanks again, Ray.
Now let's take a closer look at Temple's defensive unit. The linebacking core has always been a key piece for the Owls, and this season the expectations remain high. We now bring in OwlSports Updates' Adam Whittakin for more. Hey, Adam.
This upcoming season, the Owls need to adapt after losing multiple key players on both sides of the ball. Their defense particularly has been affected the most after losing 10 out of 16 graduating seniors last season. Here's a look at a few new faces on the starting defense.
It's hard enough losing one high-profile player, not to mention three. The Owls lost 3 defensive players this past year, all to the NFL, which leaves them looking for more than just talented replacements in time for the season opener on October 10th.
To me, it's the guys that watch the film and study the film that play fast. It's not the kid that runs a 4.6 or 4.5 40. Because if he doesn't know what he's doing, he's not going to run very fast.
Gone are Sam Franklin, Sean Bradley, and Chappelle Russell. That leaves 2 openings at the linebacker position. Thomas Joe Kamara, a 6-foot, 215-pound outside linebacker from Dayton, New Jersey, is always looking for a challenge, even in practice with his own teammates.
When they call man coverage plays, I basically sometimes have an option to cover a tight end or cover like a speed slot receiver like Blue. So basically every chance I get, I try to cover Blue in every man coverage they throw my way so that I could actually enhance his game but enhance mine as well.
Uvandy Rigby is also on the list. The dual-threat redshirt freshman from Egg Harbor, New Jersey, is wearing number 31 for the Owls this season. Excited to finally get his opportunity at linebacker, he realizes college football is a lot different from high school football. As a freshman, his learning curve is not only on the field, but in the film room too.
So the game, watching film, I feel like as a young guy, coming from high school, college really have showed me that, hey, watching film, learning your opponents, that's one thing coach talk about a lot is learning your opponents, studying your opponents, and being prepared.
These 2 young linebackers didn't get much game time in 2019 with only 1 tackle in 5 games between the 2 of them. Being a great athlete is one thing, but getting there has what this prolonged preseason has all been about. I'm Adam Whittakin with OwlSports Update.
Temple football isn't the only sport where athletes make it to the pro level. When Shea Petty graduated from Temple in 2012, she had big dreams of making it to the WNBA.
Yeah, after nearly a decade of bouncing between WNBA and international teams, the 31-year-old made the biggest shot of her professional career this season.
For more on Petty's shining moment in the first round of this year's WNBA playoffs, we bring on OwlSports Update's Sean Carpentier. Sean, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Jackson. Shea Petty has already had quite the roller coaster ride in her professional basketball career. Though she left Broad Street in 2012, she made her WNBA debut just last year. Now, she makes headlines as a player for the Phoenix Mercury, and I got to talk to her about her journey.
It's a classic story of redemption. In the WNBA, also in Europe, 8 years trying to get to the game's biggest stage before the shot that made it all worth it. To say Shea Petty's road to the WNBA playoffs has been long is an understatement. Since her graduation from Temple in 2012, she's been picked up and cut more times than she's happy to admit, not to mention playing professionally in Europe. That's where she thought her WNBA dreams were over.
After the second time I got cut, I kind of just gave up. I stopped asking my agent, was the team going to bring me to training camp? I just kind of figured that, people don't get 2 opportunities at their dream job. So I figured the third opportunity was not going to happen at all.
But the call did come in 2020. Back in the WNBA and back from Europe, Petty was with the Washington Mystics. But history will repeat itself one more time.
And like I already know what I'm going to get out of Washington. I've been cut so many times. Like I just don't feel welcomed, and I wouldn't feel like I would be okay going back there.
Remaining in the WNBA, Petty found herself in Phoenix the next season, and that's where her perseverance paid off.
Because it's just like, it was just one shot. Like, you know, I know in that moment it was big. Like I'm always going to remember it, but I didn't expect the response it's getting from like all types of media outlets over it.
Petty is looking to return to the WNBA for another year, but she is also willing to start her career as a coach. From McGonigal Hall, I'm Sean Carpentier, OwlSports Update.
The NCAA has announced that men's basketball will be returning to play on November 25th, 2 weeks after their initial start date of the 10th. Originally, Temple's opening game was scheduled for November 13th against the University of Virginia in the first ever Hall of Fame shootout, but now that will most likely be pushed back. The NCAA also announced that the national tournament will still take place in March and include the normal 68 teams. For a school to be eligible, they must play in at least 13 games against Division I opponents. Meanwhile, the maximum number of regular season games a school can play in is 27. The fall teams continue to be as patient as possible, waiting for their seasons to start in the spring. For the field hockey team, as part of the Big East, it's been practice after practice, with some friendly competition thrown in the mix. This past week, the field hockey team held an inter-squad scrimmage at Howard Field, and because of health guidelines, no fans were allowed in the stands. The Owls were split into a cherry team and a white team. Reminds me of a certain sports show right here on TUTV. In the beginning, both sides were shaking off some rust after months off because of the pandemic. This showed as the game was a back-and-forth defensive struggle with neither side able to break through until the cherry team found an opening. Here, junior Annie Judge finds teammate McKenna Burkhart to put cherry team on the board for the only goal in the 45-minute scrimmage. As for when they'll play games against opponents other than their teammates, Temple still does not have an official answer. The Big East postponed fall sports for 2020 and expects to play next spring.
Now turning to yet another sport hoping to return in the spring, gymnastics. And when they are back in action, there will be a new face on the coaching staff. OwlSports Update's Jen Rodzowicz brings us the story.
Thanks, Brooklyn. Sometimes it can be difficult to make friends when you're the new kid in town. But for gymnastics' new volunteer assistant coach, Rachel Page, she already has 2 friends here in Philly.
Seeing a familiar face may be uncommon, but it's comforting when arriving at a new place. For Temple Gymnastics, it's new volunteer assistant coach Rachel Page, who will be greeted by not just 1, but 2 of her former gymnasts.
I've actually been coaching gymnastics since I was 15. So I've had like 25 years of coaching experience in the Junior Olympic program.
And it was in high school where Paige met Serena Whalen and Lainey Hyman.
She's like a mom figure, kind of. She's like really like caring, a great listener. Yes, so understanding.
Sharing a hometown less than an hour outside of Atlanta, Georgia, Paige has coached Serena and Lainey for about 3 years before they came to Temple. The bond they created at the Gymnastics Training Center has helped them reconnect almost 1,500 miles up north.
I remember one night we like built gingerbread houses and she was like judging them, and it was just like, I don't know, she's just always fun and like lightens the mood.
But it's not only the young gymnasts. After the unfortunate ending to last season, the veterans are ready to defend their ECAC championship. Senior Delaney Guerin says Coach Page will bring a new energy to this year's squad.
Honestly, very excited. It's always nice to have a fresh new coach on the staff because they can add something that maybe your previous coaches like didn't see.
I'm just excited to be a part of the whole experience of the whole college world experience. It's going to be so much different. And just the whole team environment, I think, is going to be really exciting.
The Owls are hoping to be back in the gym for official practices on October 2nd, but this time with a new face on the coaching staff.
With hopes that they will begin their practice this week, Coach Page and the rest of the Owls are ready to flip into action. Brooklyn and Jackson, back to you.
Thanks, Jen. The women's rowing team has just announced their captains for the upcoming season. The 3 rowers honored include 5th-year senior Carrie Ann McGee and 2 juniors in Megan Arders and Emma Spade.
Carrie Ann McGee is the squad's only returning captain and won bronze as part of a pair at the head of the Schuylkill race in 2019. Megan Arders earned her leadership nod as she won gold at the AAC championships last year with Temple's 3rd varsity 8 boat. Then, earlier in 2020, was presented with the Scholar Athlete Award from the Collegiate Rowing Coaches Association. Emma Spade helped the Owls get silver in the second varsity four at last year's conference championships, which was the program's highest finish in that event. As of right now, Temple does not have a start date for their 2020-2021 season.
In this week's Twitter poll, we ask you guys, will Temple football be above or below 500 this season? In their upcoming all-conference schedule of 8 games, 65% of you say that they will finish above 500, while 35% are doubtful that the Owls win 4 of those games. Remember to follow us on social media at OwlSports Update to stay updated on the very latest and to keep voting in those weekly polls. Well, that'll do it for this edition of OwlSports Update. Courtney Murphy and JJ Mayhowski are back next week.
For Brooklyn Vaughn and the entire OwlSports Update crew, I'm Jackson Neal. See you next time.